I'm Jerry Portman. Nice to see you all here this evening. This is Paul Cooper, and this is Fred Gretsch.
It's unfortunate we won't be in Brunswick or Albany, but we'd certainly like to say hey to all the people there, and hopefully this video will serve as if we're there.
And that's Paul Cooper talking. He's the man from the making Gretsch drums every day, just about 35 miles away in Ridgeland, South Carolina. And we're jazzed to be here with a great jazz drummer and with a wonderful clinic going to happen for you this evening. It's our shout out to Southeast Georgia, and Paul's a drummer, and I'm celebrating my 50th year in the music business here. I started 1965, Brooklyn, New York, 60 Broadway, where all Gretsch drums were made in 1969. We've been making them here close by in South Carolina since 1985.
We welcome you all here tonight, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Okay, well, I'm not any fun, so I'm going to turn it over. Paul Cooper's going to come up and talk and tell you about Gretsch and how the drums are made, and then Mr. Fred Gretsch is going to come up and tell you, and then we're going to turn it over to Kent and go from there. So I'm going to quit talking and turn it over to Paul Cooper.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out on a Wednesday night, and it's kind of cool in Savannah, Georgia, to see a bunch of people out here who are excited about drums, as I know I am, and most people in this room are.
That's Tuesday, Paul.
Tuesday. Oh, it's Tuesday? Yes. I never know what day it is anyway. So, anyway, so Mr. Gretsch hired me in '98, and I've had the pleasure of working in that factory just about ever since. So, we really care about what we do up there. Got a bunch of drummers working there, and a lot of non-drummers too, but we've got a lot of great people that have been there for a long time, and pretty much everything we do is old school drum building technique. You're not going to find a bunch of high-tech computerized machines in that factory. It's all old school. A lot of the machinery is the same machinery that we used in the Brooklyn factory, and then in Arkansas when the company moved there for a while. So our whole mantra up there is to try to build drums by hand the way they did in the 50s and 60s. And we make 3 different lines of drums up there. There's the USA Custom drums, the Brooklyn drums, and the Broadcaster drums. The USA Custom drums are basically the same drums Gretsch has been making since about 1955 or so, when they went to a 6-ply shell. So the USA Custom drums have that original Gretsch 6-ply shell formula, which is a combination of maple and gum that makes that Gretsch sound. The same kind of drums that people like Elvin Jones, Art Blakey, you know, all those great jazz cats play, and really made Gretsch what it is as far as that great Gretsch sound. Okay, those drums go through a lot of processes. First, we start in the wood shop. We sand the drums. We do have machines to sand them, but their machines are operated totally by a human. There's no computers in there. The operator controls how quickly the drum gets sanded, how much pressure's on it. It's a lot of hand work. After we're done sanding them, then we go, and if it's a stain finish, we take it back in the spray room, and we rub the stain on by hand. We wipe it off. We rub it back on again, wipe it off. It can take anywhere from, you know, 6 to 10 coats of stain to get to the right finish. In doing that, it can take all day to stain a rack of drums. And a lot of companies nowadays really don't go to that length in applying stain. All our lacquer drums are sprayed with nitrocellulose lacquer, which is the old instrument lacquer from back in the days. Most of the other drum companies and most instruments today are made with polyurethane. Okay, it's a different finish. The lacquer finish, the nitrocellulose lacquer, continues to dry for the life of the drum. So that lacquer ages, and that's why some of those old Gretsch drums sound the way they do, is because not only is the wood aging, but that lacquer continues, the solvents continue to come out of it really for a lifetime. So, you know, it's kind of a special thing. We put normally 6 coats of lacquer on a gloss finish. We'll spray a coat on, let it dry overnight, spray another coat on the next day, then we sand between that coat and the next coat, spray another coat, let it dry overnight, spray another coat, let it dry overnight, sand again, spray another coat, let it dry overnight, and spray another coat. So putting the lacquer on the drum takes a while. Okay, after we're done with the lacquer, then all the drums we make in Ridgeland have our secret silver sealer on the inside. Okay, Gretsch started putting silver on the inside of the drums in really the late 50s, beginning of the 60s. And at the time, most all the drum companies were spraying some kind of paint on the inside of their drums. It was just kind of a thing of the day. Well, the people at Gretsch chose the silver lacquer, and the lacquer, the paint they chose, actually has some aluminum in it, right? So aluminum has some reflective qualities and certainly has something to do with that great Gretsch sound. The reason the tone is so focused and the drum sounds the way it does has something to do with the silver lacquer. We typically don't tell people how we put it on, so I'm not going to tell you that. But it would probably different than what you could imagine. After we're done in the spray room with the silver lacquer, we then let the drum dry from anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, depending upon what kind of a finish it is. If it's a solid color, generally we let them dry longer because there's more lacquer on the drum. When the drum is ready to be, when it's dry, so then the next thing we do is wet sand it. Okay. And I will tell you one of our secrets is ivory soap. Okay. When we wet sand it, we take water and soap and mix them together, and we spray it on the drum, and then we start sanding it. The whole idea we do all this sanding is to get that finish just as smooth as it can be, because the smoother the finish is, the more beautiful it's going to look. We want that fine furniture look on our drums, and that's really what you're getting from our factory, is finished with a lot of labor in it. So after we're done wet sanding, then we take this beautiful piece of wood that we spent all this time on, and we drill a bunch of holes in it, right? So in our drilling area, we've got a couple guys working in there, and they're pretty busy most every day. And drilling is a funny area because I always say don't mess with the driller, because if they put a hole in the wrong place, well then we're back to square one. So a drum will take 3 weeks to get to through the spray room, and if we mess it up in drilling, well then that customer's going to wait another 3 weeks. So we try not to make any mistakes in the drilling area. We've done a very good job of that, really, for the most part. Once we're done drilling, the next thing we do is we cut the bearing edge on the drum. Now the bearing edge is something that over the years, you know, in the 30 years ago, nobody even knew what a bearing edge was. Most drummers really had no idea what it did for the drum, and the drum companies themselves really paid not a lot of attention to them. The bearing edge is really an important part of the drum, and really has a lot to do with the way the drum tunes. All our bearing edges are cut by hand. Okay, the USA Custom drums and our Brooklyn series, both of those drums get the same 30-degree classic Gretsch bearing edge, which Gretsch has been using that edge really almost forever. Even the drums back in the 40s, the bass drum and the snare drums had 30-degree edges. So most of the other drum companies do a 45-degree edge. So our edge is a little different too. That has something to do with the sound. Once we're done with the edge, then if it's a drum that needs to be buffed, it goes to the buffing area. And buffing is a very labor-intensive thing. We do it old school. Our buffing wheels are probably 50 years old, at least. 2 old buffing jacks, and of course I've spent a lot of time buffing, and it's really back-breaking work, but it's very enjoyable. So after we're done buffing, then we take the drums, we put the badge on them, put our serial number in, we take them to the assembly area. Currently we have a lady named Barbara in the assembly area. She's been there for 23 years, and God knows how many drums she's put together. But she can do it much quicker and faster than I ever thought about, so I stay out of her way. But after we're done assembling the drum, gets put on our inspection table. Normally the next morning we inspect the drums, get them packed, and then they get shipped all over the world. So it's kind of crazy that in the little town of Ridgeland, South Carolina, we make this product that literally goes worldwide. So it's kind of a cool thing to be involved in. But we do build 2 other series at the factory. We build the Brooklyn drums, which are similar to the Gretsch drums. Minor differences in the shell. The Brooklyn drum has a maple and a poplar shell, still 6-ply shell like the USA Custom shell. And we use a different hoop on the Brooklyn series and on the Broadcaster series. And this is a 302 hoop. It's fashioned after the stick chopper hoop that Gretsch used in the 50s. only it's 3 millimeters thick, which is about the same thickness as our die-cast tubes we use on our USA Custom drums. So the Brooklyn drums have a little more of an open sound. They sound slightly different than the USA Custom. USA Custom drums, when you play them, the sound really projects back up at you. It's very microphone friendly. With the Brooklyn drums, they project a little more away from you. So I mean, out front, you're not going to know the difference really, but some people say they're a little more spongy feeling. The toms are than the USA Custom. But we've been doing Brooklyn drums since 2012, and they've been very successful. And they're available in a kind of a limited number of colors currently, but throughout the course of the next year, you're going to see a lot more options available on our Brooklyn series. Last September, we introduced the 3-ply broadcaster drums. Okay, what we did is we went back and we kind of recreated the same shell that Gretsch used in the late 40s and early 50s. And those drums, they sound like a brand new 50-year-old drum set. And when we did those drums, instead of doing a 40 or a 30-degree edge on them, we went and we did the old roundover edge, which is really kind of an old school thing. You know, we did that old round edge that used to be horrible, only now we sand it perfectly smooth and it's a beautiful edge. So that round edge makes the drum sound really warm and just like an old friend. So it's kind of funny, when I got to the clinic today, I pulled this kit out of my car, which this is a 3-ply kit, and of course Kent was like, "Hey, can I play that one?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So anyways, that's a little bit about what we do at the factory. If any of you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Yeah?
You make your own rim set, right?
You mean the metal?
Yes.
No, they're made up, I'll say.
Well, explain the difference in the on the Brooklyn and the normal triple flange.
All right, well,
Die-cast.
I'll go 3 ways with that.
Yeah.
So these drums, these are USA metal snare drums, okay? So they have, this is the classic Gretsch die-cast tube. Gretsch was the first company to use a die-cast tube, and die-cast tube it's made out of zinc, so it's really a rigid hoop. Some people say it chokes the drum. I don't really believe that at all. It just really focuses the tone of the drum. Okay? Die-cast tubes also, in this day and age, are very costly. To get that stuff plated and cast and all that, it's a pretty costly process. That's one reason why when we came out with the Brooklyn series, I went with a steel hoop, which is a little less costly. But also the steel hoops are known to open up a drum, to make it ring more resonance. So we wanted to do that because the drums, you know, Gretsch drums in the 50s had that open resonance, and we were kind of going for that vibe. There's also, most other drum companies, a triple flange hoop, which is like this. This is a double flange. In other words, it has 2 curves in it. The triple flange curves back this way on the top, and you'll see that on most everybody else's drums. But we really don't use any triple flanges at this point, except maybe on some of the, on our 3-ply shell, it's only has 3 plies, so you don't have a lot of rigidity necessarily in that shell. So what we did is it's a maple ply on the inside and the outside, and the inner ply is poplar. So that inner poplar ply is really thick. One thing the first few samples I had of them, really the shells were a little wobbly. I won't say they were unstable, but they weren't quite strong enough. So one of the things we did on the inside of that shell, we did a scarf joint instead of a butt joint. So there's an overlay inside the shell about that long, where the 2 plies, the inside ply overlays itself. And that's the way they made them back in the day. And they did that for a reason, because it adds that rigidity that you need in the shell, so it doesn't go out around, it stays attuned and all that other good stuff. But the 3-ply shell is really something. It's like old drums made new again. And just this past year at the Messe show in Germany, the Broadcaster kit won Best Drum Set of the Year. And that was in a year where they came out in the 4th quarter of the year. So we were pretty happy with that, considering the other kits have been out all year.
What range of finishes do you have on the Broadcaster?
Well, Broadcaster currently is available in 4 finishes. This kit is a satin copper. We also have a satin classic maple. We have an Anniversary Sparkle, which is a wrap, and we have an Antique Pearl, which is like looks like white ring pearl that's 50 years old. It's kind of yellowed. Currently, we're working on additional finishes. You're going to see a lot more selections on both Brooklyn and Broadcaster in the next year. Well, just as an example, the tom-tom shell of a USA drum is .218 thick. Okay, the 3-ply shell is actually thicker than that. It's .260. So with the 3-ply shells, all the drums, bass drum, snare drum, and the toms are all the same thickness. On USA Custom and Broadcaster, you have a thicker bass drum and snare shell than the tom-toms.
Okay.
What's the number typical man hours in the typical drum set?
Well, you know, if you look at the way the manufacturing bean counters count it, okay, it'll sound like not a lot of hours.
Right.
You know, you're working on 300 drums at the same time, and how much time does they actually take to spray a coat of lacquer? Well, it might take you a minute to spray a drum, one coat. So, you know, if you've got 6 coats, you know, manufacturing people would say, oh, you got 6 minutes in it. Well, that's really not the truth, right? You know, it's a lot more than that. But it's somewhere around 12 hours, or, you know, give or take. Yeah.
How many snare throw-offs do you have? I restored a lot of, we built a lot of drums, and I'm always looking at throw-offs, and you know, and I didn't know if you had. I mean, I knew the classic one that's over there, and then of course the butt end. And those patents are probably near and dear to everybody. Are there any innovations, or is that such a good thing?
Well, we've used the Lightning. This is the Lightning throw-off and butt plug. And we've used that. That came out in the early '60s, and has been used ever since. About maybe 4 years ago, we came back out with the microsensitive throw-off. We re-engineered the microsensitive throw-off, which was the throw-off Gretsch was using prior to the Lightning. And we took, it had some design flaws, like the handle would break off. You look on eBay and you'll see early '60s snare drums with the handle broken off the snare strainer. So that was one thing that we obviously addressed. And we made a big die-cast arm on there that won't break. But when we initially came out with the microsensitive, we sold about 250 of them like that out of the box to people who had old '60s drums that wanted to replace those throw-offs. So currently we have those 2 throw-offs. It's really well. We're also working on a new one that maybe we'll see in about a year or so.
You still make the drum key?
Yeah, we have the same Gretsch drum key right here. Right?
With the little holder.
Yeah, and the famous Gretsch snapping key holder, which is right here, and very handy thing. I have them on almost every snare drum I own, almost, just because I'm stuff everything. I'm going to turn it over to Fred Gretsch. Fred is celebrating his 50th year in the music industry, which is quite an accomplishment. And here he is.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for all of your years of service to drummers around the world, Gretsch drummers around the world. And I know you enjoy playing drums. In a month, how many gigs do you do?
Oh, as many as I can.
Is that 2 or 3?
Oh, let's go maybe 8 to 10, if I'm lucky, more than that.
Not bad for a guy who's working 5 days a week,
Right,
long hours of the day.
Yeah, I never sleep.
So he brings that extra perspective, and there's a lot of people to thank here this evening. I come as a 4th generation of a family and stand on the shoulders of my great-granddad who started the business, my grandfather who introduced me to the business, and at 60 Broadway in Brooklyn, Dad who died in '48, Fred Gretsch Jr., who was involved in music business from 1926 when he graduated Cornell to 1970, shortly after selling the business to the Baldwin Piano Company. And the neat thing about Gretsch and Portman is there's a long-standing relationship of the 2 companies. I looked up some old pictures, and there's a 1958 picture on the right in the picture is Ben Portman, so the father of the current owner, Jerry, of the business. So, and also a 1958 photo on the right-hand side is Fred Gretsch Jr., my mentor in the business, who I went to work for full-time in '65. So I went to work at 60 Broadway, Brooklyn, 13 months after the Beatles had played on the Ed Sullivan Show, and rock and roll was really happening, and it was a super busy time. There at the factory. In 132 years, here's a poster of the history of the business, and I'm going to brought a stack of them and leave them in the back of the room, so everybody's welcome to have one of those. So Chet Atkins, 1954, and Charlie Watts, 50 years. I mean, how can you beat stuff like that? So, and you see there's a Charlie Watts story in this issue, and also something about George Harrison too. So not a bad name in the music business. Let me thank Jerry Portman and Vernon for inviting me this evening and getting things together here, and Butch for all you've done to make this clinic happen this evening. So talking about giants, they're local giants, and we so much respect the Portman family and the Portman team for bringing music to Savannah, and a shout out to Brunswick and Albany too, though I won't be there personally. Kent's going to be there to play some great music for you here over the next couple of days. And speaking of little kids, we're blessed, my wife and I, with 16 grandchildren, and this past Saturday, the 8th grandchild graduated from high school, so we're halfway through high school, 4 out of college. So it's our goal that the Gretsch business will stay in the family for another 100 years, so 132 at this point. So without further ado, let me bring up Butch, who's going to introduce our featured artist of the evening. Thanks for coming out.